This episode of Legends, the series, is brought to you by these fine companies.
How to speak Australian. Shark attack.
The way the Aussies, I suppose that just the way that the Aussies act and carry on, I suppose, just a very Australian type of thing. I mean, I've been to Europe, I've been to Sweden, watched drag racing in England, United States, and Australia. And at the end of the day, the racing is the racing, and everybody is a little bit different in the way they carry on. Aussies, Aussies love a bit of a laugh, and they call it the ocker. The old Australian ocker, and and it sort of comes a bit, I suppose, from our heritage of most of us descend from the convicts that come out of England, and they sent them over here. This was basically, Australia was a big prison, and they sent them all over here. And I mean, I think it gives a bit of attitude, the way things are. Plus, it's a pretty easygoing country too. I mean, you go to the races. There's good camaraderie between all the teams and that most of the time, and it makes it really good. How we're seen in the United States, in Australia, I don't know, I don't think we're any more reckless. I think we're just as safety conscious and everything as any racer anywhere in the world, but probably just like a bit more fun in the pits and a bit more fun on the weekend.
South Queensland's most popular car and driver of any category is Kalenga farmer Victor Bray and his 57 Chevy. Farmer Vic's 57 Chevy has terrorised Australian drag strips for over a decade. Starting with the car we see here, a 15-second four-door, Victor added nitrous and ran a best of 11.23 seconds through the mufflers and on street rubber. The blown small block was added. Then a new two-door was built, and the small block was soon replaced by a 500-inch twin-plug, twin-mag key. Many
years ago, I was a bit of I suppose you have to say a hoon. There was not a lot of racing going on as far as that type of cars that I liked in the days. I had a nitrous oxide injected street car. It ran 10s and 11s and stuff like that, and I had a few issues with a few things, and we used a couple of engine builders over the years. Anyway, someone said, you got to go see this Mick Atherwood guy, he's a good fellow and that. So I went round to this shop one day, I just drove into my 57 and got out, and here's these bunch of guys, great big football playing looking size guys, hanging off this supercharged boat and hanging off it. Anyway, I walked up and I just, tentatively said, is Mick around? And this great big guy hanging off the back of the boat says to me, yeah, I'm Mick, what do you want, boy? And that's how I sort of met him. And he was big enough to be a front rower, mate. He was a big boy, and he was a tough man. He'd been, he's a veteran, and been in a couple of very serious situations in his time. And when I first met him, I sort of thought to myself, well, there's no go this guy's any good at building engines. Look at the size of the mongrel, But he ended up being such a lovely fellow, and he helped me. He's my mentor. I mean, I would never have got into drag racing as hard as I did without Mick. And first thing he did, he jumped off the back of the boat, walked up and had a look at the car, and we had a bit of a chat for a minute. I said I wanted some help with some stuff I was working on at the moment, and wanted to get a bit more consistent with what I was doing and go to the drags a little bit more and stuff like that. And I knew he was a big name in drag racing. He'd run nitro cars for many years and alcohol cars, and he was probably servicing 30 or 40 cars and boats at the time. In his business was Atherwood race engines. And first thing he said was, well, first thing you can do is get that nitrous off there and get a blower on there, boy. And that's just how he spoke. Mick spoke direct. He didn't mess around, didn't beat around the bush. And I thought about it for a year or two, and then one of his good buddies, Graham Eason, had a serious accident down at Service Paradise and had a supercharged small block in a dragster. And he wrote the dragster off, and Mick said, here's your opportunity. So buy this engine and you know, get it in your car and we'll go do some racing. Okay, so I had a look, but hopefully at the time I was a tomato farmer, not earning a terrifically large amount of money, but at the end of each tomato patch we used to let the patches open to some Italian friends of ours used to come and pick all the old tomatoes, and they used to go and make sauce out. We'd get a bit of sauce, and they used to make sauce for their families. And this time, tomatoes were pretty good, luckily, right now. So me and Marie went out there every afternoon after work, and we picked the patches of tomatoes, sold them for $2 or $3 a box, and finally bought the engine. Graham Eason was good enough to let me pay the motor off, and over about a 3 or 4 month period, after a couple of patches of tomatoes, we finally got paid the last payment, and I had myself a supercharged small block Chevy, which I was pretty proud of, I've got to tell you. We fitted it in the car and we started racing and started travelling around the country, and that's when the supercharged, that was early Wild Bunch. There wasn't too much out there right then.
Drag racing crowds aren't easily moved, not even when a jet flame threatens to singe their eyebrows. But they do appreciate a good burnout, and for them, no one does it better than Victor Bray and his '57 Chevy.
Burnouts in Australia and high horsepower cars weren't really around at this time, and here I am, a '57 Chevy, you know, blue singlets, stubbies and thongs, you know, and you know, didn't even know what a seatbelt was in them days. But I mean, you know, we go to the summer nats and they've got this thing, they're having a burnout show. I didn't even know what a burnout show was, right? So I got dumb old me, jump in the car, sit on the start line and hop in the car, and Mick just says to me, Mickey was down there, and Mick just says to me, he says, right, boy, just flatten it in low gear, right? And when the red light comes on, the shift light, just shift into second gear, and you'll be right. That's just, you take the Ren, do the show. Because I'd never ever driven this car before in my life, right? He put the motor, and this was a little sort of test day before we went drag racing, and so I just flattened it anyway. That's history after that. Anyone that watches that video soon gets the gist of what happened on that day, and you know, massive big burnout thing, and it was all new to me, baby. It's all new to me. And on that same day, if we started up, I hit it once and broke a belt. Blower belt, you know, instantly I'm thinking, well, you know, this is a lemon here, putting superchargers on your car, going to break a belt. But I broke a belt, and within 5 minutes, someone from the audience threw a belt over the fence at me and said, chuck this on there. So we whacked that on, then we did the big burnout. So it was pretty good. And then the first time I ever really ran the car hard at a drag race was the opening of Willowbank Raceway. And I think it was about 25, 30 years ago, something like that. And I'm sitting in the pits, and you know, everyone else is running. I'm sort of a nobody, nothing in the backwoods sort of thing. And haven't really run the car much. I'd done a couple of burnouts and a couple of launches in it. That's all I'd ever done. And anyway, there was 4 cars that had a Wild Bunch feature for the opening of, I think we had 4 of the big names at the time out there. One of the cars broke. So Dennis Stiramus, the manager of Willowbank, comes down the pitch and says, well, can you get your car going in a couple of minutes? And yeah, what for? What's that for, Dennis? So we're short one car up there at the Wild Bunch. So, oh yeah, you betcha, baby. So I jumped in, I went out there, right, and I was so excited. I just did these massive burnouts and backed it up, and the massive burnout and backed it up, and crowd was going crazy. And I mean, right there and then, that was certainly the start of Victor Bray and his love of drag racing and love of being around people. And you know, all my family was cheering and carrying on, and it was a really good day. I'll never forget it. It was fantastic.
All over the farm there are dead cars, but some you could never put out of their misery, like Victor's first '57 Chevy. It's been promised a restoration.
That's her.
This is the first '57 Chevy.
The very first one we ever had. She's been sitting around here a while now. We've got all the carpets ripped up, oil all over them.
Did you ever take this to the drive-in flex?
Yeah, every Saturday night.
Really?
Yeah, no, this was it. This was the car, like, this is basically the car I grew up in. You know, like, I put the door trims in, I put the seats in, I did the carpet, I did the whole deal, you know, I did all the engine work, everything. I mean, there was nothing at the time, you know, he had no money, it was just a lot of fun. Getting out there and layering it up and hotting it up.
In fact, Victor liked the car so much, he nearly named a child after it.
I always liked, there was 2 guys who I'm good friends with today, the Brad and John Parker, and I used to drive around. I had Monaro. The first car I ever had was like a street car with a V8, and it was a Holden Sandman panel van, believe it or not. I used to love going up the beach surfing and that sort of stuff, and cruising around. And I had a Sandman panel, I used to drive around, and I some Monaros, which are like, sort of like Camaro coupes, and they're a very iconic car in Australia. And I had some really good ones of them, and had 3 or 4 of them in a row because I just loved them. But I used to drive around the Pine Rivers area where we live here, and there was these two blokes getting around, young fellas, John Parker and Brad Parker. And John had a 55 Chevy, a V8 Bel Air, and Brad had a 57 Custom Line. And Brad had on the back of his car, on his Custom Line, he had Chev Suck written on the back of it, and John had Ford Suck written on the back of him. And they were characters, and we're still good friends with them today, actually. But I used to watch these guys around. I was actually sitting up there picking someone up from school one day, up at the Pine River School, and next minute this 55 Chevy pulls up at the stops. I don't know if John will like me saying this, but this green and white 55 Chevy pulls up at the lights, and next minute turns right, and he just flattens, and this thing done a burnout down the road and sounded just crazy. And I just thought, I've got to get myself one of them, And anyway, I heard that another mate of mine, Russell Peters, had bought a Chevy, and he had it at his house for sale. So I shot down there, jumped in the car, shot down there, and it was I remember it was sprinkling a bit, and it had a tarp out the back, and I got out of the car and I walked out, and I lifted the back up, because the 55 doesn't have the big chrome over the back fin, and I've lifted up the back of this tarp, and I saw this big chrome fin here, the big chrome Bel Air thing on the side of it, and so I put it back down again, and I just thought, oh no, that's, didn't like that, and I jumped back in the car. Well, I wouldn't have got 2 minutes down the road, and I decided to myself, oh geez, that thing looked good, so I spun around and went back there and went and picked her up, and I bought that one, but the one that I've kept forever, I bought off a guy called Wayne Barber who dealt in Chevys, and it's the car that I've really loved. That car was in a lot of pieces, so I didn't sort of keep it for very long. And I had a couple of 55s and that as well, but the 57, the fins and the iconic, and at the time I didn't know what a 57 Chev was, and when I first saw it, I just, like I said, I wasn't impressed, and it took me 10 minutes, mate, and I was back there. Wayne Barber, a dealer in Chevys over here in Australia, he told me that he had a 57 Chev for sale. And Wayne's a bit of a character, so I went over there to where he lived and went and had a look at it and said, oh yeah, we'll buy that, it's not bad. I think it was $630 or something like that, in them days was an awful lot of money. So I bought the car and I jumped in the car and I took off down the road. I got to the first corner and the front wheel fell off it, off the car. And I thought to myself, what's going on? What have you done to me, Wayne? So I walked back up the road and he come down, gives a hand to put the wheel on and that. And that was the first of the 57s. But there's not too many wheels fell off it since, mate. But she was a beauty. She was a little bit rough, a little bit knocked around. Been in the Australian outback, the place called Miles is where it came from. Had a 6-cylinder in it, so I just went and put the biggest, fattest set of wheels I could find on it, and drove it around with a 6-cylinder in it for ages and ages. And it was I was preening like a peacock, mate, and it was a little beauty. And that car I've still got today. I bought that when I was very, very young, early on, and I've still got it today. And it's a good car, and had a couple of restorations, and sort of built a bit of a street machine type reputation with it.
Taking part in the 2-round series is a category generally regarded as the sport's great entertainers, the Wacky Wild Bunch. Their race cars are immaculate, supercharged, alcohol-burning sedans ranging from 55 Chevrolets to the latest model Commodores and Falcons. And they race at heart-stopping speeds.
Back in the early 90s, the Wild Bunch had become a phenomenal in Australia. There's a lot of people. There's about 30 or 40 cars racing in it. Some really good guys, and a lot of them have obviously moved on, and I love catching up with them today too. We actually saw Mark Eves, which was a big name in the sport back then. He does business. He worked a business and sort of left the sport for a while. And a lot of guys, Dave Baxter. There's just so many of them. It's just amazing in the early days when it was building up. And what was happening was at the competition level, we're putting PSIs on our cars, and Norm Drazy had come over here, and Scotty Cannon and other guys over there in the sport were getting big names. It was sort of building up, and the problem was it was sort of not losing its value to us. But the problem was that we knew that heads-up drag racing was a much better situation than what we were doing with some guys that have Hemi, some guys that have small blocks, and so we had to put a set of rules together. Now Andrew, who was in charge of the rules at the time, they we'd been approaching, me and a few other guys had been approaching to do some rules. So 1995 we had our nationals, And at the Nationals, they were going to do a Doorslammer demonstration. We actually didn't have a name at the time. We were going to do a Doorslammer demonstration. And but we were running in competition in the actual Nationals themselves. We were running in competition eliminator. And there was probably, I don't know, a dozen Doorslammers there to put on the demonstration, and we were all running in comp eliminator. And then some sick twist of fate, someone who hierarchy at the time at the track and with Andrew and everything decided, some racers complained that the Doorslammer guys were getting extra track time and giving them an advantage when it come to run comp eliminator by doing this demonstration. So it just turned out just a stupid situation where me and George Clasby, a good friend and a big name in the sport back then, we were sitting at the front of the staging lanes to do the demonstration for the Doorslammer thing, and it was really, really important to us. I'd been working on it for years. It had to happen, right? So we're sitting at the front of the thing. Murray Anderson, who built both our cars, he was crew chief on George's car, and Benny was there and everything. So we sit at the front, and the guy says, "Oh, out you go and do your demo." And then one guy leans in the meeting director leans in the window and says, "Oh, by the way, if you go and do this demo, you can't run comp eliminator." I'm strapped in the car, the motors, what are you talking about? You know, anyway, I looked at George. Murray ran over to me and said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, if we run, we're kicked out of the Nationals." Oh, well, this is more, I don't care. This is more important. I do care, but we'll work that out later, after the run. I'm going to run the Doorslammer challenge, right? And there's all these other guys behind me who want to run it too. So me and George, we fired our cars up, and we started pulling out in the staging lanes at Calder Park. And we're turning around. As we turned around onto the start line, we looked over our shoulder. All the other guys were towing back to the pits. They were going to run comp for the weekend. And me and George put the only run that went down in the demonstration, the official demonstration, because we did a bit of qualifying. That's when this problem started. With all the guys who qualified, no one else wanted to throw it away, but me and George did. Anyway, it was only probably 2 weeks after that, Andrew decided. Because I wasn't happy. I had Castrol as a sponsor. I only just turned them on. I only just had them and had a big facility down there, you know, with all their corporates coming in. And it was a big early time in my career in entertainment and corporate Australia at the racetrack. And I got booted out of the Nationals, which probably didn't go down too well. But that was the start. About 2 weeks after that, Andrew gave us, recognised us as a class of top Doorslammer and put us in a professional category, put a set of rules in place. We had a few meetings with the guys, put some rules in place over the next 2 or 3 months, and 1996 was the first year that Top Doorslam was run as professional category in Australian drag racing, and yeah, I didn't get to run comp eliminator, by the way. Somebody had to fall on their sword, give up the right to run the Nationals for Doorslammer to be recognised by everybody and become a professional category, and me and George, especially myself, were very, very keen to do it, and I'm happy to do it, and happy I did it.
We are now ready for quarterfinal action in Pro Modified, and this is the most controversial car of the year, the Black Mariah of Fred Hahn. And this is Scotty Cannon in one of the most colorful cars you'll see all year, the Wild and Willie 41 Willies.
Well, Fred Hahn, there is the controversy sitting right there. It's the supercharger, and Jim Audie right now just indicated to Freddie that everything's ready to stage the car. Hahn qualified number 8, Scotty Cannon qualified number 1.
A lot of the drivers think it's unfair to run this supercharged car in the near lane against the nitrous-boosted cars such as Scotty Cannon's. Right now, Cannon seems to have this one well in hand.
Scotty Cannon by 2 or 3 car lengths.
While I was, growing up and we're drag racing here in Australia, obviously we were very heavily influenced by the pro mod, how it was developing in the US and mainly in IHRA back then, and we were watching them all. I mean, I was pretty impressed with Scotty Cannon, not only his racing abilities, but his attitude towards life in general and people in general. He was there to win races, and that's what he was going to do. He's going to win races. I'm going to change from nitrous, I'm going to change the blower, I'm going to do what it takes. And all the other guys at the time, I mean, the soft seal car and all these fellas, that was just really good. We were very well informed on it. We used to keep a good eye on it. We're much better informed nowadays with the internet and the way stuff is, but back then we used to look it up and watch what everyone was doing over there and keep a good eye on it. Would I have loved to have been there? You bet I would have loved to have been there. Did I go and watch a few times? Yeah, I did. I went and watched a few times, and all that did was just spark me to come home and work a bit harder and get bigger engines and more stuff. And it was growing in Australia at the time too, but it was nowhere near advanced as what it was over there. And I think the supercharged Hemi drag race type thing that we have now is very, very big. I think we were a little bit, there was a time there when the IHRA Pro Mods and the US Pro Mods were running mainly Chev engines, while over here we'd already put Hemis in the cars, and most of the cars over here were already running Hemis. I mean, John Zapier, you know, a few of the guys over here, and David Baxter was actually the first guy to put a Hemi in a car over here as part of the Wild Bunch, and that's what we had at the time. We didn't have a Pro Mod as a heads-up bracket. We had a demonstration bracket where a bunch of us just had, you know, supercharged sedans that we just loved racing. There was really nowhere for us to race. We only doing demonstrations and going out there and messing around in other brackets like Competition Eliminator and stuff like that. And that's when we put the Wild Bunch together and we started running up and down the east coast of Australia. And that's when we started to realise that we had something to sell and something that people loved to come to. The big crowds were coming to all the regional tracks and to the major tracks. And that's when guys like Camp Stanley and Tommy and all those guys were invited to Australia, John Shelby, Johnny Rocker. Everyone was coming to Australia then, and that's what really started building the sport over here. And you know, the early days, I mean, we brought Scotty Cannon over here, and he had probably the single biggest impact on the sport in this country. And you know, as far as pro mods go, people just to come and they flock to the racetracks to watch Scotty Cannon and suppose beat me or me to beat him, one or the other.
Scotty Cannon, or is it going to be Victor Bray from Australia? On the great line, this way of yes. Oh, and whoa, Scotty Cannon takes the win, 6.30.
And we really enjoyed it and took a lot out of us, and I suppose cost me, Scotty, and other people, you know, in the long run. But it was fantastic, and that's what built the sport. And yeah, the US races are still icons, and the ones that run over there and race over there. A few Aussies have been there racing. In the NHRA Pro Mod series and stuff, so yeah, I wish I'd been around in them days, mate. It would have been good in the US. I was feeling pretty jealous some of them days. I'm sitting down here running my supercharged Hemi with a roots blower on it and a crowd glide clutch in it, watching those boys over there fly down them racetracks. But hey, it's all good now, mate. It's all good fun now.
Kids and wife Marie are 100% behind his efforts.
My name is Marie Bray, Benjamin Bray, and this is Billy Joe Bray, and their older sister was too shy to sit here at the moment. And it started out as a hobby, but I think now it's more of a job because you've got to be so dedicated. There's a lot more time and effort involved in the maintenance of the motor and everything.
My wife Marie's been at every event I've ever raced at. You know, she supports me 100%, as the rest of the family does. She supports Ben 100%. Not overly interested in racing without her there. I don't think I ever have actually raced without her there. There could have been one time or something, I'm not sure, but she plays a major part in the car and obviously in the ability to get to the racetrack and support it and spend the money and do the corporate and all that stuff. So you know, I run a family race team, and that's how it is. Yes, it's a corporately sponsored race team, but it's 100% family orientated. My two daughters, my son Ben, of course, and Marie, and now grandsons are all involved and becoming parts of other teams and stuff as they move around. And no one has to do anything that they don't want to do. I mean, I've got, you know, some grandkids that aren't interested in drag racing. That's okay. I'll support them with what they want to do. But as far as Marie goes, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to race without Marie around.
All Brays are automatically indentured to the drag game. If you're not tinkering with the engine, you can work on the burgeoning market for Bray merchandise. On a big race day, Victor's eldest daughter Kelly sells literally thousands of dollars of Bray goodies. So do you sell many of the mirrors?
The mirrors, well, I mean, at $55 a mirror, a lot of people will just mainly buy them for a bar.
Does it surprise you that people are so fascinated by your phone?
Well, I've been around it for so long now, so it's just natural.
I'm very proud watching Ben out there racing. He's done an awful lot of good things in his short time that he's been out. Well, it's not that short a time. He's been racing about 15 years now, so he still seems like the young fella that started at 17. But Ben was crew chief and he ran junior drags to series and program, won a few big races there, championship and stuff. And then he, when he was 17 years old, he jumped. He was actually crew chiefing for me when he was 14 and 15, and he learnt the cars inside out and upside down. And he was never pushed into the sport. I mean, it's what he wants to do, and he can walk away anytime he likes, he knows that, but he's pretty tied up in it and he loves it. He actually does, it's not only the Doorslammers that we run with the blow-on supercharged Hemis net in them, he actually runs his own program with the turbocharged 4 cylinders and 6 cylinders that he just loves, that part of it, the sports compact part of the thing. You know, as far as, I mean, obviously there's inherent danger in drag racing. I mean, we take every safety aspect that we can very, very seriously, as everybody does who runs the sport. It was probably, you know, over the years I've been asked an awful lot, what's the best thing that's ever happened in the sport and what's the worst thing that's ever happened in the sport? Well, you know, I suppose the best thing that's ever happened in the sport was, one of the best things that's ever happened in the sport for me was seeing Ben be successful on the racetrack, and very, very early in his career as well. Like, he was 17 years and 2 months when he won the Nationals. So you can't race it until you're 17. You've got to get out of junior drags when you're 17. And obviously one of the lowlights is when he had his accident. You know, it's sort of, you know, I used to have to always pick through to see what the lowlight was, but it's pretty clear to me nowadays. It's when I watch Ben tip upside down on the track and hit hard and see him get seriously injured. And you know, it took a year or so to recover. It was a very bad time. And there's some really bad stuff happened all over the world in the sport. It's just part of it. I mean, you can get run over walking down the road. That's how we probably balance it out in our heads, you know. You can jump in the car, walk across the road and get run over, and people do every day. Accidents and people, you know, getting seriously injured and killed. It's happened a lot in Australia. It's happened a lot in the US. I've often said about drag racing, people say, oh, what do you think about drag racing? What's your overall thoughts on drag racing? And my thoughts are that, and I've often said it to people, that if it wasn't for the cost of drag racing and the danger involved, everybody would be doing it. Well, I suppose when I'm gone, I just like people to remember that, you know, what we did. We were dedicated to the sport, but really I want to know that I raced with Victor Bray. He raced with his family. He was a family guy that raced with his family. You know, I lost my dad, you know, quite a few years ago, which was really affected the way the farm operated here. He was the centrepiece icon for that, you know, and I lost him in 2000. And yeah, from that minute on, the farm had a lot of interest, and you know, the Bray heritage on the farm and everything is very, very important to me. It's really important that my mum had a good life from that time on, which she has had, and you know, I think that's very important to me. That the family side of everything that I've done is very, very important to me. That mum's happy, Marie's happy, the kids are happy, grandkids are happy. You know, life never ever goes smoothly. You know, if it does, enjoy it, because there's rough times coming, and you know. And everyone has issues from time to time, but I want to be remembered as I helped everybody maximum amount I could. That's one side of it. The racing side of it, I just want people to remember that Victor Bray was a drag racer and a dedicated drag racer. And you know, I think everybody races except the few guys that have you know, major business behind them. I think most people that race at the level that I raced at and the way I built up to the level where I was racing probably extend past where their financial position is, and I was very fortunate to have sponsors that allowed me to go to race way above any level I really deserved, and very, very proud to be able to represent them and do it. And I used to sit at home packing tomatoes and bagging pumpkins in the shed with my dad and my brothers, and listen to the radio, and they'd do ads for Surface Paradise and talk about guys like Kim Pettlewood and all these fellas, and you know, they were people that were racing icons in those days. And I was just absolutely mesmerised by hearing that these guys, you know, they're down there, they're drag racing, wow, how's this working? You know, I had a street car at the time and stuff, and I was only, you know, in my late teens, early 20s, and And you know, then to actually be out there doing it was just, you know, along the lines of what Mick Asselwood says, you know, a farm boy from Kalanga that was, you know, dedicated farm boy from Kalanga that come from a, you know, fifth generation farmer. Probably didn't deserve to have the career that I had, but hard work and the love of the sport got us there.